This conference will now be recorded.
So hi, everybody. If you have questions, go ahead.
Hi, Francis. I have a question about realism and idealism. And you said previously that idealism, that non-duality doesn't imply idealism.
Absolutely.
And I can see that. And I've explored the route through idealism to non-duality. So I wanted to explore the route through realism to non-duality. So I'm presuming this is a scientific route, and that if we look into the material world, then we end up with particle physics, and then everything starts to get pretty weird, and you're left with a kind of a probability field. I'm not an expert in science, but that is just my sort of rough summary. I wondered whether that kind of probability field was sort of the equivalent of awareness in the idealism model, or are we looking at something more like panpsychism, where consciousness is an attribute of particles like mass and spin and charge?
Oh, no. But first, I have to realism means simply that there are other forms of existence than minds. The openness to the possibilities that there are other forms of existence than minds. And so that, if you will, reality in that sense is bigger than minds. So, as a result, or there is this statement that the universe exists independently from minds. So that would be the realism position. Now, it has to be, a distinction has to be made between realism and materialism. Materialism is a branch of realism according to which reality is made of matter. And then matter is often seen, so it's a kind of an antiquated version of philosophy based on 19th century physics, in which matter was seen as an aggregate of small particles that would be like little balls of granite, of metal in orbit around each other, in the same way as planets are in orbit around the stars. This view of matter has completely been debunked by 20th century physics. So really this form of materialism is outdated. But realism is a different thing. Realism is, there is one reality out there. The universe is real, exists independently from mind. Now, the question is, what is the reality? What is the reality of the universe? Something interesting is that Professor d'Espagna, a great 20th century quantum physicist, who was also interested in philosophy, has shown that one of the options of realism, which was called atomistic realism, meaning in which reality was seen as an aggregate, precisely, of little parts, of atoms or particles, has been falsified by modern science, and so was no longer an option. In the same way as the view that was held by the Catholic Church prior to Galileo was that more or less the Earth was the center of the universe. This view has been debunked by science in the same way. This view of that was derived from materialism of reality being made of an aggregate of small particles has been debunked because of the oneness of nature, because of the correlation at a distance between quantum systems that have interacted in the past, that have to be, once they have interacted in the past, no matter how far away they are from each other, they remain correlated. They have to be considered as one single system. So in a sense, on a very intimate level, the universe has to be considered as one single reality. So that's to answer the scientific part of your question. But realism is something else than materialism. It's a more general view of the of reality. Simply that, so what going back to the duality between idealism and realism, we face apparently two possibilities. Idealism, there is only mind. Now, what we have to remember, and so idealist, the thesis is idealists say we don't have to posit the existence of a universe independently from minds because we don't have the experience of it, because we only have the experience of our minds. Therefore, to posit the existence of a universe existing independently from minds is unnecessary, and according to Occam's razor rule, which we should apply in this case, we should let go of this unnecessary, complicated, convoluted theory of a universe existing out there and stick to the facts of our experience. There are only minds. So that is the case in favor of idealism.
And
however,
that was really what I learned previously.
However, there is a flaw. There is a flaw in this logic, which is the following. It is true that we have no evidence that the universe exists independently from our mind. But if we apply this logic, and that's the important point, if we apply this logic, we don't have any evidence either that other minds exist, other minds that our own mind exist. So if we are consistent with the application of this logic, if we apply Occam's rule to deny the existence of an external world, we have to apply this very same Occam's razor to deny the existence of other minds. And we are reduced to the position of solipsism, which is not very satisfactory.
Yes.
That which is good for the goose is good for the gander. That which is good for the external world is also good for other minds. So it turns out, because of this reason, that this idealist view, which seemed to be very beautiful and very economical in terms as a theory, requires us ultimately to be a perfect solipsist. And then, of course, with terrible consequences. I mean, it denies love, it denies the fact that we are talking to each other in this moment. There is no point if only my mind exists for having this conversation with you. So then, the discovery of this flow in the idealist view now opens up the possibility of the realist view. It makes it much more palatable, much more possible, much more in valid, at least as valid as the idealist view from the standpoint of logic and reason. Should we, now the next question is, can we and should we try to find out between these two views of reality, which one is true? If we investigate this question, we can see that obviously there is no phenomenal evidence that could help us make this choice. Therefore, it flies in the face of reason to make this choice. Therefore, to claim that the idealist position is the only one which is valid is not rational, it's not logical. So if you use reason in your quest for truth, you have to be reasonable all the way. Therefore, any teacher, truth seeker who makes the claim that the idealist position is the only one which is true is not reasonable. Now, it is true that the idealist position is consistent with non-duality. But just as the idealist position is consistent with non-duality, so is the realist position. There is only one reality. This one reality creates the human minds as a result of the human brain. The human brain is part of the human body, which is part of the planet Earth, which is part of the universe, which is the creation of the manifestation of this one reality. If you ask me, which one of these two possibilities do you prefer? Well, I want to have the best of both worlds. I like them both, but I am not infatuated with any of those. It's a little bit like in quantum mechanics, the duality between waves and particles. Depending on the circumstance, we can choose to consider a wave or to consider a particle.
Suppose we slightly change the idealist position and say it's not that everything is occurring in my mind, but there's a kind of universal mind of which my mind is a small part or a small view onto. Does that make more sense?
Help at all. It doesn't help at all. Which experience do you have of this universal mind?
well, I don't. The only experience I
Okay,
have is that I
you
don't like solipsism, and that it doesn't. It's not a. I mean, I haven't got a reason for saying I don't like solipsism. It's just intuitionally, it seems pretty crazy.
yeah, but rationally, your universal mind is as crazy as solipsism from a purely rational view. By crazy, I mean unverifiable through phenomenal experience. That's what I mean by crazy, irrational. So you can have all the irrational, you can attach yourself to all the irrational, unverified theories that you want. But then you may as well be a religious person.
Yeah.
And believe that Jesus walked on water or whatever.
I find it quite hard in sort of day-to-day life, because I've been for so many years now, must be eight years or so. I've been following the direct path, and but really taking what's essentially an idealist position, but not that everything is in my mind, and definitely not solipsism, but more the idea of a universal mind, like almost like the causal level in Indian philosophy. I find it hard to kind of retain a sense of I don't know, even though I know that I don't know, and it's absolutely clear that I don't know, but I find it hard to retain that, because I feel that I'm not separate from anything else, and I think when I started to, I did masses of Rupert's yoga meditations, one every day for about 3 years, and I ended up kind of, and I still, I don't feel a world out there. I can't really explain, but whatever it is I feel seems to be more to have the perfume of an idealist position than a realist position.
Well, anyway, you refer to a mind which is bigger than yours.
Yeah.
God's mind. That's Berkeley's God's mind.
Yeah.
And
that would be the only way to make a rational sense of it, I think.
no, that's not rational.
And
no, that's not rational.
Yeah.
Because rational means logic plus experience.
Okay.
So it may be logically consistent, but what is missing is the experience of it. Now, that's a bad news, that you don't have the experience of the universal mind. But the good news is that you have the experience of universal awareness. So what's the problem? It may be that your intuition of the universality of awareness translates into attributing universal awareness human mind-like qualities, and solely human mind-like qualities, in a sense restricting reality to be human-like, to be anthropomorphic somehow. So I'm not denying this possibility, but I simply, why would we restrict reality to be mind-like? Because it's like putting man at the center of creation, or putting planet Earth at the center of the universe. It is this type of anthropocentrism that resurfaces here in a more subtle form. And we go back to Voltaire's word when someone in his presence was saying, God created man in his image, to which Voltaire quipped, and conversely. So you see, what you have to do, to take, in my view, from our conversation, is that revisit the way you construe awareness, not the way you experience awareness, because there is nothing wrong with your experience of awareness. It is the same as mine. There is this absolute reality that attaches to it. It's absolute transparency. It's absolute invisibility. But see that instead of limiting yourself to the actual experience you have of awareness, that doesn't tell you about a universal mind, in addition, you superimposed onto it a mind-like quality. And that's because somehow the experience of your own awareness, you interpret it as being mind-like. So if you would construe as an antidote for that, if you would construe awareness as being reality-like more than mind-like, your very same awareness, then it will erase this distinction between mind and matter. In other words, instead of seeing awareness as mind-like, or instead of seeing reality as matter-like, you could see matter as consciousness-like, and mind as reality-like, and to see reality and consciousness, awareness, as being the same thing.
Right. I think it's experiencing that I see as mind-like, because mind isn't always present. I mean, if we go deeply into meditation, into consciousness without objects, there's or into sleep, it doesn't, there doesn't feel like a mind-like quality there. But when there's experiencing of objects, then I don't feel them as objects. I feel them as mind-like. So, yeah.
I don't see what could you rephrase that? I didn't understand what you meant.
Well, there are times when mind isn't present. There's there's no thoughts present. There's no perceptions present. There's no sensations present.
Yes.
And then I don't conceive of that. That feels totally neutral, not mind-like, and certainly not human mind-like. But when when there's perceptions present, when I'm looking around my room and I'm seeing the objects in it, then that certainly feels mind-like.
Absolutely. Of course, that's mind.
So that's okay.
That's the reality of your experience. We never experience a tree. We only experience our perception of the tree. That's absolutely true. And our perception of the tree is a form of thought, in fact.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
So it is true, if you want, if it is true that our human experience has two sides. One side is mind, the other side is awareness, the perceiver of mind. So, and in fact, they are not different. In other words, mind is an appearance in and a creation of awareness.
Yes, I see that.
So yeah. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
That's true. That's so. Even Kant, who was not a non-dualist, made this observation. He called the world das Ding an sich, the thing in itself. And he was very clear that we never perceive directly the thing in itself.
Yes, exactly, because our senses are limited.
We only perceive our perceptions of it, and therefore we cannot posit nor negate the existence of the thing in itself.
Yeah.
The idealist position becomes a fallacy the moment it negates that which is not perceived. We cannot negate the existence of something we don't perceive. In this moment, I'm not perceiving Manhattan. Doesn't mean New York doesn't exist in this moment. But it is true that New York is not present in my perception in this moment.
And it wouldn't matter if New York wasn't present in any human mind at the moment.
Yeah, the question is, if New York is not present in any human mind or in any mouse mind or any spider mind or any virus mind, whatever, the question is, could New York still have some form of existence? And that,
yes.
that takes us back to the beginning of the question between idealism and realism. And we cannot, the truth is that there are advantages and disadvantages to each of these positions. If we say it doesn't exist, then we have to be solipsists. If we say New York doesn't exist when it doesn't appear to minds, either we say it appears in God's minds, but then we are not rational. If we are rational, we have to be solipsists, or we have to be open to the possibility that it exists in a different form than mind, which is a realist position. Now, something important. And there are two forms of realism, and one form of realism states that the reality states that mind doesn't have an existence independently from the reality of the universe. So one form of realism, for instance, states that the human mind is dependent upon the human body. Another form of realism, more general, makes a statement, we don't know about that. So that is very important, this distinction. So, of course, the form of realism that negates the existence of mind in the absence of the supporting physical body, this form of realism is also irrational, just as irrational as the idealist position that negates the existence of the world in the absence of mind. To negate the existence of mind in the absence of the world is as irrational as to negate the absence of the world in the absence of mind.
Right. Wow.
You see? So
yeah.
the only logical position is not to make this determination between these two possibilities. And it doesn't matter because we are awareness. We are the reality. And who cares about the rest? And perhaps these two theories, if you will, these two representations, these two models, the idealist models and the realist models, they are just subjected to the limitations of human minds. I mean, human minds, we are looking at reality through a very narrow window. So we have to be, you know, this awesome reality requires humility on our behalf. And to accept not to know.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
So just I want to do is to liberate you from the limitations and from the belief, which is subtle, but nevertheless inherent in the idealist position. In the very same way as I would try to liberate someone who has adopted the realist position from the subtle belief which is inherent in her position.
Yes, I get it. Thank you.
To reach this beautiful state of not knowing, you know, total not knowing, total freedom.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Francis. That's really great. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Many years ago, I was reading like the book by maybe Eckhart Tolle, and there was something similar to yoga exercise. He said in the book when I listen, when you listen not through the ears, but try to listen. When you listen, try to listen through the whole body, and it helped change the way I perceive, not permanently, but at the time, and later I forget about that practice, and coming back now, the Francis you says universe is our true body, so can I feel the universe as my true body, especially when I think, because when I think I often lose the borderlessness. Oh,
Well, first, it is false to say that when you think you lose the borderlessness, because when the borders appears as bodily sensations which are deemed to be the borders, the walls of our body. So if there is only thought, if only concepts and images are present, there are no borders, because there are no bodily sensations with which you could identify as your walls, as your borders.
oh yeah. So yeah, I don't lose borderlessness, but if I say it differently, when I think little seriously, I start to focus my attention on some part of my body, maybe my head and my chest area, and by doing so, I think I'm really trying to think now, and uh, uh, and
Why do you do that? When you think, you focus on your body?
I think
Because when I think, I focus on my concepts,
concept.
not on my
Mm-hmm.
body. In other words,
Uh-huh.
when I think, I focus on my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah,
When
I
I
think.
feel, I focus on my body. When I perceive, I focus on the world.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think I'm making some mistake. Like for instance, if when I try to learn some like tennis, maybe I get tense some part of which is not useful, but like
Yeah, but it's useless. You see, it is true that when we do something that we don't like,
yes,
we kind of punish ourselves by contracting some part of the body because we don't want to do it. So there is a conflict in us, and every conflict has a somatic aspect. I mean, every conflict in the mind translates also in a conflict in the body that appears as contractions. So the way to resolve this conflict is to ask yourself, am I truly doing what I want to be doing in this moment? It may be that the answer is going to be yes. But then the moment you have decided that you are doing really what you wanted to be doing, the contraction will disappear. You
mm-hmm.
see? The contraction was there because of a lack of clarity, a conflict that needed a resolution. It's like you wanted to do something, and at the same time, you didn't want to do it. So it's like pulling and pushing, or pushing and pushing at the same time.
Yes,
So it creates a waste of energy. You just
yes.
relax.
So it includes when I'm thinking also, if thinking like the okay,
Thinking is like a river flowing. You look at the river flowing. You don't make the river flow. And
yes,
You see, you just contemplate the flow of your thoughts, and it's effortless.
Yes, maybe when I'm making effort, kind of I'm busy, rush. I want to get answer. I want
Yeah.
to reply, but I don't have immediate thought. So I think then I'm making effort, I think.
Yes,
And
but you see, I want to get answers. There are two ways to describe. There are two ways to describe. I want to get answers. One way is in which I feel that I am miserable right now. I am
Mhm.
miserable. And if I only could get the answer, then I would be happy. The other way, which is much better, is like you are watching a movie. Of course, you want to know what's going to happen. You want to know who the murderer was, but you are enjoying the movie right now. You are enjoying everything which is happening. You are enjoying how Hitchcock, is in an artistic way presenting the situation, how the situation is developing, the humor in the little scenes. You see the beauty of the photography. You are enjoying all of that in the movie, but still you want to know. But you will know at the end. It doesn't matter really. So then you can enjoy the moment. So it's very different, you see. So your thinking shouldn't come from misery, hoping that if you find the answer, you'll be free, but it should come, from your freedom in the moment, from your love, from your interest. And then you remain in your interest, being interested by the question, and you allow for the question to develop, you allow for the river of thought to flow. You see? And you flow, you swim with the flow, and then you end up in the ocean where it opens up all of a sudden, and the ocean is the answer.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Francis.
Good to talk to you, Nam.
Francis, may I ask a quick question?
Please, Melissa.
Thank you. First, again, I always want to express my deep gratitude for how deeply freeing your clarifications are, and how it's expressing in so many ways in my experience in my life. So thank you again. But just a little further on the previous discussion that you had with Jenny. So I wanted to just, I think I followed everything that you were pointing to in that discussion. And I just wanted to make one clarification for myself here to draw the distinction between perceiving and experience.
Between what?
Between perceiving and experience. And my understanding of it is that perceiving always involves subject and object. So, in that way, it is a function of mind, whether it be, again, perceiving, sensing, or perceiving a thought. So again, it's always a function of mind, and so it has built into it the inherent limitations of human mind. Whereas experience is more than that because it includes the recognition of our beingness and the recognition of our awareness, which are one, the awareness, beingness, that profound mystery. And so it is objectless, because we cannot find, and when we look at our beingness, it's not an object. When we look at our awareness, it's not an object. So our awareness, beingness, is objectless and can only be called experience. Does that make sense?
Yes, but at some point it becomes a question of semantics. You know, I use the word experience and I divide it into phenomenal experience, which then corresponds to what you call perception.
Yes.
And noumenal experience that would correspond to what you call experience.
Yes. Yes.
So experience is bigger than perception. In other words,
Yes.
perception requires experience, but experience doesn't require perception.
Yes. Yes.
Therefore, experience is the true substance of perception.
Yes.
So therefore, there is no real perception, there is only experience.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Thank you. That helped me to delve a little deeper by pointing that out. Thank you very much.
Francis, can I ask?
Yes, Julia. Hi.
Hi. It just so I wouldn't forget that beautiful discussion with Jenny as well. You were talking about two different views, materialistic views of reality, of creation, and one of them is when the mind is dependent on
The world.
reality, or the world. How would you call it? I guess you would call it reality, right? No?
Well, that I was saying there are two versions, two possible versions of realism, because realism is in contradistinction with idealism. Idealism says there is all existence is made of mind.
Yeah, I understand perfectly.
So
I just
realism is a position in which you say not necessarily. But if you say not necessarily, there are two versions of that. There is one which says, well, the mind doesn't exist without the world. Not only the world exists independently from mind, but the mind doesn't exist without the world. And there is another position that says, well, the mind can exist independently from the world, and the world can exist independently from the mind.
yes,
These are two different positions.
Yeah, and this is what interests me. So I know that I have leaning towards materialist by my upbringing view of the world, but on the other hand, it's a contradiction.
Dialectic materialism.
Yes, and then on the other hand, I feel much more comfortable living using idealist exercises when we just kind of like, thinking that we are everything, there is no borders, and it feels much better to live like that, much more comfortable. But I still see that when you talked about these two different kinds of materialistic view of the world, I caught myself that, yeah, the truth is mind does depend on the world. It's like, so I lean towards, like, I have this big concept that is true in my mind. So why do you think that it's irrational? Can you explain it to me? Because I probably can figure it out, but I would love for you to talk about it. Why is it irrational?
It's irrational to say that the mind depends on the body.
Yes. Why is that irrational? Why is it irrational?
It is because what rational means is logic plus experience, logic plus facts. And if we delve deeply into it, there is no way to prove this hypothesis to be true and the idealist hypothesis to be false. So that in that sense, I mean irrational in the philosophical sense, not in the scientific sense.
Mm-hmm. So then the most rational views would be to accept the idealist view of the world, to be open to both materialist, idealist, and to be open to both idealist and the second kind of materialist view of the world, right? This is the most rational, in your opinion. The second kind is when you don't know whether mind depends on the body or not. This other kind of materialist view is out the question for you, right?
Yes, just as idealism is out of the question.
Oh, okay.
Idealism is irrational if it says, if it negates the existence of the world in the absence of mind. And realism is irrational if it negates the existence of mind in the absence of the world. And the only way to be rational is to say, I cannot negate anything.
Okay.
I cannot negate the angel. I cannot negate the existence of other realms I have no knowledge of, because as a human mind, I have a very small window through which I contemplate the city of reality. You know, I am there in a small room with a very tiny window, and it's a huge city.
Yeah, so I guess I still would love to stand on something, but you just like kicking out the standing out from my.
Oh no, there is something you can stand on. It's you, your awareness, which is hearing my words, because you know that to be real. Precisely, that's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
You stand on this, the fact, your own awareness is your ticket to the experience of reality. And that's why it's very important to eliminate everything else, because everything else is just belief systems. And as long as we have a belief system in the mind of knowing something, it prevents us from being completely free. Just as long as we have a feeling system in the body of being limited, not the body being limited, but us, awareness being limited, it deprives us from our freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we need to cleanse the mind and to cleanse the body from all these limitations.
I understand. Yes, that's a cleansing process. I keep thinking that I'm gonna find something to hold on to, but actually it's the opposite.
But as I said, yes, you cannot find something objective, something phenomenal to hold on to. That's the beauty. Because the moment you cannot find anything to hold on to, you fall back into what you are. And you don't have to hold on to what you are, because you are it. You don't have to hold on to yourself, you are it. You are this awareness, this reality. So this awareness, which is hearing my words in this moment, is the only reality there is, and we all share it.
Why?
That's beautiful. I love these discussions. They're amazing. I have so many questions. I had another one, if you don't mind. It
Go
was
ahead, Julia.
yeah, it was this beautiful meditation you had called The Beholder. If you don't
I
remember,
don't put the title. John puts the titles for me. So I don't.
But it describes it so well. So I guess and this was you had a beautiful metaphor of consciousness as an artist probably, and it would be like you perceive everything as one big painting, painted in one medium. Maybe it's not exactly how you said it, but it was like the whole reality is one big painting, including your own feelings and perceptions, outside, inside. Everything is one painting done in one medium. This is how I saw it. Like there is no like, it's not like a collage or anything like that. It becomes all one. And then I thought about that you always talk about Cézanne, how you like his painting. And I couldn't understand it for a long time because I do paint, but like you discover for yourself artists for what they are. So every time I would look at Cézanne's paintings, I thought, okay, I don't see what you see there. I mean, it's not about beauty, but it's about something else. And I think I understood while listening to this meditation, I understood what it is. It was like in his paintings, there is no focal point. Everything is treated equally. Kind of like in consciousness, right? So it just exists in one view. So the painter, it almost doesn't have a point of view or opinion. It just embraces the whole. Is it what you see in it, or it's maybe much more than that?
Yes, what I see in Cézanne is the love.
Mm.
Cézanne was not skilled at all as for drawing. But he loved the art. He went to the museums. He was trying to reproduce the painting by the great masters. And so what you see is a man who was not talented and who, through his love, transcended the lack of skills and achieved the beauty is everywhere. And talking about the point you made, every square inch of the painting was treated with equal respect and equal love. You
That's
see,
what
so
I see.
that applies to that. But there is more to it, the love for the landscape itself, the communion he felt with the mountain and with the beautiful landscape around the Aix-en-Provence. Also how he would unknowingly impart dynamism to his paintings. The walls of the houses are never perfectly vertical. There are slight changes of direction. They are not perfect like in a photograph. So that the entire landscape begins to dance. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like the Van Gogh when he paints these little vortices, in some of his paintings. The choice of the colors, the emotion he felt for this type of blue, for this green, the sky, the oneness he was trying to convey to the totality of the painting with the brush strokes. There are some painting where all the brush strokes are kind of at an angle like that, and the entire painting is like that. So which grants the painting a oneness, that's a master painter, the universal consciousness painting the painting in one single brush strokes, and these are creations. You see, it came from the moment, and he has always one way to unify the painting. When he paints the, for instance, in the still lifes, he paints what is it? The fruit, the oranges, the apples, and so on, and he puts around a dark contour, like a little bit like a child, you know. A child, he draws first the contour of the apples, and he takes some watercolor and paints the inside. But Cézanne paints a contour, but he doesn't close the contour. That's the beauty. He doesn't close it. So in a sense, because it's not closed, the apple connects with the rest of the still life. So it creates a unity, whether he was doing that consciously in the way I'm describing it, having looked at his paintings, or whether it was a direct inspiration that he just liked it for whatever reason. You see? But all of that confers to these paintings a serenity, a oneness. Other painters find other ways to confer this oneness. I mean, there is not one single way to express the beauty of the absolute through music, through painting, through architecture. There are many ways. There are classical pieces of architecture with perfect symmetries that speak to the heart, like the Parthenon in Athens. And there are Japanese Zen temples where there are no symmetries, obvious symmetries, but there is balance, there is something else. So there is not one recipe to express beauty. That's the point I'm making. There are many, but the essential part comes from the true inspiration of the artist.
Yeah, it's almost like even here, I appreciate it so much that what you said. Even here, it's almost like I would like to grab onto something. I noticed it. I grab onto, okay, this is what he did. This is what but he just was doing something that he felt was beautiful, and he wasn't trying to like conceptualize whatever.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And because, you know, I've tried painting because I love the truth, I love beauty. And I'm a very lousy painter. I wasn't bad at technically drafting, you know, drawing, but why? Because I was trying to apply spiritual recipes to my paintings. You know, things that I have observed that good painters such as Tiziano or Rembrandt in the composition. So I was thinking of my composition, I was thinking of everything, and I ended up with something like,
Wow. So this is it, like, yeah.
When I moved from North California, I had all these oil canvases in the crawl space, you know. So I took at them. I was horrified. So they were left where they belong, in the trash.
I mean, I'm sure they were beautiful, but I'm just like, you talking about it, and yeah, and this is like, it's again the same thing that the first question was. So consciousness doesn't have recipes and it doesn't have any models.
No,
That's
exactly.
it. And the same thing with our real art, right? There is no model, there is no concept.
Yeah.
That's it.
But nevertheless, you know, it's so good to learn an art form, even if you are not talented for it, for two reasons. First, it's enjoyable. Second, it enables you so much to appreciate so much more real artists. You see, it is the best introduction. I mean, instead of taking a lectures on art, you know, and to know the life of this painter, you know, and the problem he had with his girlfriend or with money or whatever, it's so much better to learn the craft. to discover by yourself, and then to go to a museum, and then you learn how to appreciate. And I know it's not, I'm not saying that for you, but for other friends, it's so interesting.
I mean, it's for me too. I learn all the time, you know, and I mean, it's kind of endless, but this the good thing to learn that you have to have technique, but there is no recipe and there is no model and there is no concept you should be working towards, because it doesn't work like that in anything.
More being open. And you know, I kind of like painters artists who explore.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, like Cézanne, he was like a scientist, more like a scientist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are other artists, they paint always the same painting and they try to reach a perfect, you know, like a potter who tries to make the perfect ball, and all he makes all of his life are balls. And of course, there is also in this Zen form of being an artist, there is beauty there also.
God, thank you so much. It's so nurturing, these conversations. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Francis.
Yes, Florian.
Quick question about desires and resistances. I can see that as long as we believe to be someone, the inevitable consequence is that we want something because we think something is lacking, or we don't want something, like the opposite reaction. But, and this is the question now, is this a misunderstanding that once we no longer believe to be a separate person, that there are still, I wouldn't call it, I've come to name it preferences. So it's not so much that, for example, even if you don't believe to be a separate person, it feels to me it's almost natural, and it's natural to prefer not to be on a dentist chair than to be there.
Of course. Of course.
So would you say there's a difference to be made between likes and dislikes and preferences?
What is important is to which entity these preferences or likes and dislikes are attributed or assigned. We have to be clear that our body has preferences, likes and dislikes. For instance, our body doesn't like very much the dentist's chair. In the same way, our mind has preferences, and not all minds have the same preference. Our mind can prefer mathematics, or our mind can like mathematics. Another mind will not like at all mathematics. And both likes are very understandable and acceptable. Now, when it comes to the likes of and dislikes of me as awareness, that's a different story. If my like or dislike is based upon the belief that I, as awareness, am this body-mind, this human body-mind, then this like or dislike becomes problematic. Any other like or dislike which is not based upon this belief is okay. It can be a celebratory desire, like the desire, or the desire of a composer to compose, or the desire you may have when you're in your shower to sing. The desire to watch a good movie, the desire to have dinner with a friend.
Yes, especially with these types of desires. And this is like asking you for confirmation if I'm on the right track there. This has become fairly intuitive and easy for me by simply checking if I see, oh, I'd like this, right? But if there's this underlying sense, if it doesn't happen, if it's not possible, then no problem at all. It's not a big deal. For example,
Yes,
right?
yes, that would apply to what I call celebratory desire. Now we have to be careful because there are other things that we could call needs. And needs are needs of the body or of the mind. For instance, need for water, need for food, need for health. So these needs are needs of the body. You are the manager of the body. If this need is not fulfilled, then suffering will continue. You see, in other words, it's the body crying for help. It's the body crying for water, for food, for medical help. So we have to, as a manager of the body, we have to pay attention to those needs. There are also needs of the mind because we are social animals. So the need for company, for instance, if it is resisted, may lead to some form of suffering. You see, so in a sense, we could say that the need for beauty, the need for music, there are needs on that level too. In other words, it's not like, or if I don't have beauty in my life, you know, if I live in a lousy apartment, if I'm surrounded with people who are lousy also, and it doesn't matter. Well, that's not true. I'm kidding myself. It does.
Yes. So in other words, it's like the need for celebration, for the expression of truth, love, and beauty, to surround yourself, with people and activities that express that.
Yes, but if this need, the celebratory thing is, okay, let's go to the theater. Or we cannot go to the theater because the theater is not working today because of the virus. Too bad. That doesn't make you miserable because it was a celebratory thing. It came from happiness. And the fact that you cannot go to the theater is no problem. We are going to watch something, an old beautiful movie on TV, and it's fine. So whereas a need, if at some point, if this need is not fulfilled, there will be the need will still be there. But so there are legitimate needs, as you say, to be surrounded with beauty, to hang out with nice people, etc. These are needs of also of the mind.
Okay, got it. And along those lines, the other side of the same coin, basically, if you're, let's say, surrounded by people who are in a foul mood or obnoxious, then what you will the impulse would be to get away, you know, to resist this, to dislike
Exactly.
this, and that would be
Exactly.
well, you could conceptualize that and say, but well, who is bothered? But it's just, well, it doesn't express what I.
Good for you. Get the hell out of here, and good for you. You know, it's unless you have a responsibility towards these people, but you don't want to be there and try to convert and to preach people who couldn't care less.
Yes. So if you are, like you said, if it sometimes it's inevitable, at least for a period of time, then you just realize, okay, you're unaffected by that, and you will seize the first opportunity to get the hell out of there as soon as it arises.
Yeah,
But while you have to be there,
yeah.
yeah.
You know, you don't. Our mission is not to convert, to save the world. The history is full of world saviors who have made things worse for mankind, whereas people who had no high mission to convert or whatever, they were still playing their part in the universal orchestra, and they were playing it in tunes. That's all that is required for us.
Yes. But I wasn't even thinking about so much about trying to save the world or convert people. Just the fact that there is this, you could call it this dislike coming up, that you don't like the situation, and this doesn't imply necessarily that this is a residue of ignorance. It's just like a
Absolutely.
natural. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can ask yourself, when you feel that, where does it come from? Does it come from the sense of being a separate entity, or does it come from a clear assessment of the situation? And you'll see that often it is intelligence who is telling you, get the hell out of here.
I guess the trap that or the conundrum I fell into was, well, if there's someone, there has to be someone who feels bothered by this situation. So, you know, this is where I thought, well, awareness is obviously doesn't have a problem with whatever's going on at any given moment. So why do I want to leave the situation, you know? But I see what you're saying,
No,
that
but
this is
okay. Something very important to understand is what you call the situation. Because in this case, what you call the situation is the external situation in the world. But that's not what the situation is, because the external situation in the world is only part of the situation. The real situation is global. It involves the situation out there in the world, but the situation in here, your thoughts, your reactions, your assessment. So you have to take the totality into account and see, given this totality, which decision is going to arise out of truth, love, beauty, out of intelligence, love, and beauty. But you have to take into account both sides of the issue.
yes. And got it. That's very clear, because in that case, it's very obvious that if something is not in line with your true nature, then the natural response is to, you know, if possible, to get out of there.
No, that not necessarily. We don't know. We don't know ahead of time. It may be to say something, to do something, to be part of something. It may be. There is no rule book that tells us what to do in any given situation. Any situation has to be assessed as a brand new one.
Yes, got it. Thank you, Francis.
Can I follow up on this?
Please.
I understand what Florian was saying. I kind of feel the same way. I've always felt that anytime something in the world happens, the best thing to do is just to look at myself and see what's happening within. And anytime something does happen in the world that I try to figure out like what to do or what's the best step to take, like I feel like all energy is basically taken away almost. So do you think this is like a denial or laziness, or like what is it? It's almost like it's wrong to try to make changes in the world for my betterment. Like it's almost like it's useless. Like the fastest thing to do would just be to turn within every time. Just to give one example, like for example, if I think about my living situation and changing it, I'll try to use the mind or use whatever tools I have to see what would be better. And then after, I don't know, maybe a few minutes, I just feel exhausted. Like I feel so tired that it's just like, this is useless. So then, I turn within and just do that.
Well, it may be that your assessment is correct, that it would be useless if your assessment is truly that your project is going to be useless. In other words, why do it? But there are many decisions we take that are not strategic in that sense, that we don't take this decision because we want to go somewhere. There are many decisions that we take because it's the right thing to do in the moment itself, not because we have an ulterior motive in mind. If someone calls you stupid, then how you react is usually not a strategic decision, but you may try to see, okay, what does love ask me to do? What is love asking me to do right now? What kind of response would be loving for all parties involved? You see, so there is not a goal. You are not trying to go somewhere with your response. You are just trying to do the right thing which is required by the situation.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of the approach that I see. It's just, I feel like it's more useful, or it's just almost smarter to just do whatever is at that time. But anytime I project some sort of future of like, this is where I want to get to, and I try to work towards that, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like there's somebody doing this. It just feels very personal, and it's extremely tiring for some reason.
But what is right to do in the moment, on the other hand, can involve the future. For instance, you can decide to rent a place and to take a lease for 6 months. So that decision that you make right now involves the future, and it might be the right thing to be doing in this moment. So, but what we have to do is simply, because our decisions, whatever we do is decided in the moment. It's never decided in the future, even if it involves the future. So we have to try whatever decision whatever we do at every moment, we can do it only from the consideration of the context, which involves the external situation and also our thoughts that may be also possibly about the future, but to see in this global context, what does intelligence, love, and beauty ask me to do?
So what happens in, I would say, probably most cases is I will ask this question: what is best overall? Like, I'll try to take myself out of the situation and think about globally what happens, what is the impersonal, and a lot of times I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what to do, so I would just do nothing. I would just do nothing. I would just sit basically and just wait.
If you don't know what to do, don't do, because unless time is of the essence, it's a decision you have to make anyway right now. So then you take your best shot. That's all you can do.
Well, one thing too, I've always felt that so long as presence is available, as not the state of presence, but presence, that life would move about where it would be inevitable that I would be tossed in the right situation. I would not need to make any voluntary decisions. That life would just work in a way that this body would end up wherever it needs to be. And that's what feels more comfortable to me. So just allow things to just, for things to just happen this way. Is this right? I mean, am I fooling myself with this, or?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit, because there is a tendency in you to be passive, and so life wants you to learn how to make the right decisions.
Okay. So I guess not having.
Yeah. It's like, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is kind of doesn't want to go to battle, doesn't want to symbolically, if you will, to interact with the world. He say, oh, I'd rather die or something like that than to fight my relatives who are on the other side. And the teacher, Krishna, tells him, no, you're a king, you have to do what you have to do. You cannot avoid being active in the world.
Will the right decision always come on a positive note, would you say? Like, because if I don't know, is most of the cases I don't know, so essentially there's nothing to do, I understand. But if an answer comes as a thought, but with a feeling that this still isn't right, that's still the incorrect thing to do, right? It should come with a positive, some sort of yes, like this is the right thing to do, right?
That would be the perfect case, and that's the goal, how to learn to do the right thing. And the teaching is the practical aspect of the teaching is this learning. But what you have to know, the idea, as I said, is if the decision doesn't have to be taken right away, and you are not certain about what you do, postpone the decision. But it doesn't mean, oh, I am going to go to do nothing, therefore I I stop even thinking about it. No. As long as the issue is pending, you have to precisely try to find out which one is the impersonal decision. Then, when the rubber hits the road, so to speak, when you need to make a decision because it has become urgent, it has become necessary, then if you had already clarity, you would have made the decision. Now you have to do with whatever you have in hand. But the good news is that you have investigated it. And although you have not come with a certainty regarding what to do, you may have at least a best shot. In other words, you can say, okay, I don't know really what to do, but I would tend to do this rather than that. And then you do that. You take your best shot because you have to make a choice anyway.
I wasn't foolish. I was not. My brother was. I heard him do it. I was gonna go check on him.
I need to mute here. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. I understand this. I think sometimes yeah, it's just the feeling that all of this process is there's like a person involved. It's very rarely an objective
So
decision making or thinking process. There's always someone.
So then it's okay, but then see that there are many persons involved. And take your shot so that it is the best for all persons involved.
Okay.
You know, and what is the best for all persons involved is not necessarily to cave in to pressure by others. Sometimes the best decision may be to sue someone. Sometimes the best decision may be to beat up someone. Sometimes the best decision, you see what I mean? We don't know what the best decision is going to be. It's not going to be always to have a nice smile and a low voice. No.
Yeah, this all comes down to what you say often about trusting life, to trust life. And when I see this process happening in me of trying to think of and acting in the world, I think some of it is also kind of hidden, that this sort of not wanting to act, there's some sort of fear involved of making the wrong decisions or doing the wrong thing or yeah, it is just, I guess it's a process of trusting life that hasn't really come to me.
So remember, since you have attended the retreats and so on, you know, it's an approach that comes from many directions, that are you have many tools at your disposal, not only the way you think, but also the way you perceive and the way you feel. Remember that too.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Francis.